Okay, so this is my Space Tote light. It features two Citizen CLU 048-1212 cob LEDs. They are 4000K 80 CRI. I chose that particular color temperature because of its spectral output. I think was more than the other color temperatures in the green area to help kind of bump up the intensity of the green light. But unfortunately I already put it together, as you see, before I even thought about doing any videos. So what I'm going to do today is be adding I think probably another cob somewhere here in the middle, monochromatic, and then probably a couple of the 3-watt diodes kind of sparsed throughout the entire fixture. I think I haven't really come up with a complete layout yet, but just wanted to get a quick video part of just like the light and kind of give out what, my idea of what I was going to do. I'm just going to be slightly changing the spectral output to cater more towards the peak photosynthetic areas of the spectrum that I want to target. So I'm going to take it apart now just so you can kind of see what's underneath. So with the cover removed, you can see how I kind of floated the cover off with these L brackets. I think they're aluminum from one of the big box stores. Have the BJB holders here, solderless. I used some kind of thermal grease on the backing and then drilled holes to pass through for the wiring. The heat sink is 5.866 inch from heatsinkUSA.com, I believe. I think it's an 18-inch cut. Pretty simple build, pretty quick and easy. So this is pretty much the before. Quickly before I cut, I just wanted to show not the layout so much really, but just I came out with the layout on the cover plate first. That way I can transpose those cuts onto the heatsink. It's a little bit easier to make sure that those holes will match up doing it that way. And obviously, believe it or not, I wasn't all too accurate. I mean, kind of on purpose. I didn't really care all too much when I was putting it together, but these set holes here I just kind of drilled and eyeballed, as you can tell. They're kind of close to true center here, but not quite. So that's one reason you might want to go back and do your cover plate first and then transpose those holes onto your heat sink, just to avoid any conflict. That way you don't have to throw away the whole cover plate just because a couple things don't line up. I can't believe I didn't break a fucking tap. So now what we have to do is add our screws to the cob. You don't want to really torque these down way too hard. Really just snug is enough. You don't want to bend the actual board in any way. There is actually a torque rating, or a pressure rating that they give you on the data sheet, but it's kind of a little far for a do-it-yourself solution. Alright, and that should be the last one there. Now we're just going to have to wait for that epoxy to dry and then we can start soldering. Here I'm just pre-tinning the solder pads to make the attachment of the actual copper conductors easier and faster. Just get a little bit of solder on the tip of the iron and heat up the pad, and then they apply the solder to the LED itself. Just makes it a little bit quicker when you go through to actually attach the wires to it. Just doing a little series wiring here, soldering everything in series, you know, positive, negative, and so forth. Of course, when you do it this way, your voltage is additive. So we've got 12 chips here. They all approximately are going to be running about 3 volts, give or take. So it's going to give us approximately 36 volts at my target current, which is 400 milliamps. So yeah. Alright, so we have everything wired up here. The monos are all wired in series. It's positive and negative all the way around. Just going to tidy everything up and pass it through. This pass-through right here is drilled out. We got some heat shrink to protect the wires from abrasion, and then we put the faceplate on to test her out. So I was able to get everything kind of routed the way I wanted to, kind of stay out of the way with the cover plate, and got everything passing through to the junction box in the back, protected with some heat shrink. I know it's probably not exactly the greatest way to do it, but it works for this kind of do-it-yourself scenario. So just to check the spacing and the covering of the wires, it's not exactly perfect, but you know, as nice as we can get it to look. So looks pretty decent to me. Just got to screw the cover on, and then I've got the L brackets that I used here to float the cover plate off. I bought another 36-inch piece from the big box hardware store, and screwed them on also onto this first extrusion here. Give myself something to mount my junction box to, so I guess that's what I'll be doing next. So here we're just drilled a hole in the back of this project box. I think it was like $5 or $6 from Radio Shack on clearance since they're closing. Just drilled I think like a 1/4 inch or 3/8 hole, kind of routing my wires in through the back there. Nothing fancy really. Sits right on these aluminum L brackets here, and I'll probably just use 2 self-drilling panhead screws and screw straight to these 2 brackets right here. And then I do intend on mounting a 120mm fan, probably central right here, just to have some active air cooling on this thing. So go ahead and do that now. Then all you gotta do is slide, drill yourself a little hole, slide your wires and fan in. Use your self-tapping choocher here. Send that in. Oh, wrong hole. Happens all the time. Drill this self-tapping choocher in. Here we are with the line voltage splices in the junction box, and also connected out to the DC for the LEDs. Ideally, you'd want those connections kind of separated, but this is really just a prototype light anyway, so I'm not too crazy worried about it, although I was doubly sure to make sure that the splices I made were tight. At least did what I could to kind of prevent any wires from slipping out and making contact where they shouldn't be, especially on the line side here. So that is one thing you have to be really careful of. But like I said, it's a prototype, and I'll be taking it apart and trying different drivers and things like that, probably pretty constantly anyway. So I'm not too crazy worried about it. But just to be on the safe side, do remember that. Here we are with the line voltage splices in the junction box, and also connected out to the DC for the LEDs. Ideally, you'd want those connections kind of separated, but this is really just a prototype light anyway, so I'm not too crazy worried about it, although I was doubly sure to make sure that the splices I made were tight. At least did what I could to kind of prevent any wires from slipping out and making contact where they shouldn't be, especially on the line side here. So that is one thing you have to be really careful of. But like I said, it's a prototype, and I'll be taking it apart and trying different drivers and things like that, probably pretty constantly anyway. So I'm not too crazy worried about it. But just to be on the safe side, do remember that.